in the 1980s, there was an entirely different set of goals that was going on in the background that wasn't publicized. You know, business saw an opportunity to greatly increase their profits if they could move production offshore and then sell those products back into the U.S. without paying any tariffs or taxes. This became their idea fixe. You know, this was their obsession. You know, how can we get out of the United States where people where you could pay them practically nothing, you don't have to have benefits, you don't have to have good working conditions, where you could go back to the way it was back in the 1840s, where in England, when the Industrial Revolution happened, you had horrible poverty. These workers, you know, they didn't live that long. You didn't have to worry about them in any way. They just came to work. You used them just like you would use any factor of production, like metal. You use what you use from the metal, and then when it's no good, you throw it out. That's the way they worked with people. And here, they saw that the world had come to a place where they could start to use that. These countries had developed enough that their workers could be used in this way. So Ronald Reagan and Bush's father, the first Bush, they tried to pass, you know, free trade legislation, you know, GATT and NAFTA. They could not get it passed because the Democrats blocked it, because they saw how that would hurt workers in the United States. But of course, once Clinton got elected, then, you know, it was obvious that they were going to be able to get it passed pretty quickly. The only thing that was really standing in the way of it getting passed was, believe it or not, Ross Perot. Ross Perot totally understood exactly what this legislation was about, and he was willing to talk about it. And at that point, you know, after Clinton and Bush beat Perot in the presidential election of 92, you know, people still had faith in him, and they believed in him. He had credibility. And the big turning point in getting it passed was a huge debate that was put on TV. It was put on the Larry King Show, and it was Al Gore against Ross Perot. And Perot thought that he was going to win the debate strictly because truth and facts were on his side. He did not realize that there was a huge amount of money riding on this, and Clinton Gore were going to get the best investigators, spin people in the world to basically turn it into an attack on Ross Perot. Mm-hmm. And Perot laid it out in detail what was going to happen. And the basis of it, I mean, Al Gore and Clinton, they were talking about how this was going to bring new jobs to the United States. And Perot, he saw it. I mean, that's where, you know, he made the analogy of, if you pass this, you're going to hear a great big sucking sound. That's going to be the sound of jobs leaving the United States, which is exactly what happened. And he made the point, which was 100% correct, that if you're paying these people subsistence wages, how are they going to pay for stuff that's imported from the United States, that's paid with, you know, that's made with laborers who are paid a living wage? They're never going to be able to afford that stuff. You're just going to be using them to produce, sell it back to the United States, and there are going to be no jobs created in the United States. You're selling the United States society down the river. And this was clear policy. They knew exactly what they were doing, and once it was passed, the die was cast. And it's at that point that poverty in America started growing and the middle class started contracting. And this was easy to do because people didn't understand economics. See, in that debate, even though Ross Perot economically carried the debate by far, his arguments were 100% sound. Al Gore, in his smarmy way, he was much, much more effective. Anyone who didn't know economics would say that Gore killed him in the debate. And this is what they do. They are spin masters. Spin masters like never existed. You know, and I know that you know a lot about Bernays and how he started, you know, he took corporate advertising, he made that, and then he transferred it to manipulating societies. And that has been expanded to an incredible extent to manipulate us. And since we are, as a country, uneducated and made to be uneducated, they can continue to manipulate us because we don't know really what to answer them. We keep on hitting specific little points. And we say, this is wrong, that is wrong, that is wrong. But the system continues to go on. And we have people who do not have our interests at heart at all ruling the whole show.
And boy, that's a good summary of it. You know, Perot was hardly an armchair theorist or a leftist or, a communist or anything like that. I mean, this was a very conservative guy who was a real businessman and attained actual real success in business as opposed to Clinton or Bush or any of the other people that were pushing these so-called free trade theories that were supposed to make life better for us, and they clearly haven't.
Yeah, I mean, and Ross Perot was certainly no perfect human being, but he was, now they're constantly throwing around, this person is a true patriot, a true American. He wanted what was best for the country. He was not going after his own agenda. And I was back then excited about his running for president, if for no other reason than because Ross Perot was a fabulously wealthy man, and he could say what he thought. He would not, as president, he would not be beholden to all the groups who had given him campaign funds. Mm-hmm. He would have been actually able to do what he thought was right. Once Barack Obama amassed that huge war chest and had, for the first presidential candidate in history, to amass so much money that he did not want to take the public option because that would limit how much he could spend. To me, that was just proof. I mean, this guy now owes so much to so many groups. How could he possibly represent the American people?
That's been his modus operandi his whole life, as was Clinton's and as was the Bush family's. They're always working on behalf of someone else.
Just one thing I'd like to just go back. I said, just occurred to me, I said a couple of minutes ago that in the 1940s, corporations paid 150% of what individuals pay in taxes. What would you guess that the relationship is today between individual taxation and corporate taxation?
I have it's a black hole. I don't even know where to start guessing.
Well, the answer really, it's so telling. So back then, corporations paid 150% of what individuals pay. Today, individuals pay 4 times more than corporations.
Whoa, wait a minute. Let's make sure we really have that nailed down. So back then, corporations paid 150% more, so 1.5 times as much as citizens in the aggregate. And now workers, wage earners, are paying 4 times what corporations pay.
Yes. This is an actual real statistic that no one would refute or even question. And this is true, and corporations are bitching and moaning that they're taxed too much. And this is at a time, and they're contributing so much less proportionally than they have since before World War II. And now both profits and profit margins are at all-time highs. So, I mean, it's clear that, something has really gone wrong, and then we wonder why we have such big deficits. And the whole thrust of the Tea Party is, taxation is the one thing that cannot be touched. And so in reality, what's going on is that there is no group within government that is looking at the big picture. Like, what action do we take to have a thriving economy in the United States that is good for the population of the United States? And what role does that play in the world? Questions like this are not asked either in economics, economic science, nor in government when they're doing policy. Everything is a reaction to a statistic that they don't like. How can we make this better? How can we make that better? And underneath it is these agendas that are unstated that are really driving things. So, I mean, just to go back, the destruction of the middle class, just to really just underline it, that was chosen policy. This is not something that just happened. It was chosen policy because business could make more money there. And one of the things that they said, oh, but this type of globalization was inevitable. It was inevitable. Other companies would go and they would produce in these countries where labor is less and they were going to cut us, and we would then be non-competitive. They say this, but it's leaving out so many other possibilities. And I'm not saying that I have all the answers to this, and no one does, because these questions aren't even asked. In a situation like that, if you allowed, as they did, they allowed them to go into Mexico and India and China, where the working conditions were terrible, labor was cut to the bottom, and then have them be the yardstick under which they're competing with American workers. Like American workers should go down to their level. They're asking us to go back to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. What types of things could the United States done? Have said, look, if you want to do that, there are certain minimums of working conditions and wages and benefits that you have to do to be able to have things come in without tariffs. If you want to bring it in without those working conditions, we're going to impose tariffs, not just to keep your stuff out, but because of the way you're treating those workers and what effect that's going to have on American workers.
Yeah, it's just total logic. If you allow your competitor, and that would be other countries, to manufacture, well, they can manufacture anything they want, but if you allow them to sell to your market and do things both to their workers and to the environment that your own country is not allowed to do. I mean, yeah, if I can hire people for $4 an hour a day and bust their heads if they don't do what they're told and take the contaminants and dump them in the ocean, well, obviously I'm going to beat the best-run American company. So the idiocy of allowing China, to dump their products on our shores and require a high standard, and I think rightfully a high standard on the part of American manufacturers, and throw all those rules out the door for Chinese manufacturers. I mean, it's crazy. Of course the Chinese are going to win. Of course they're going to rack up, huge trade surpluses. Of course we're going to incur massive debts. Of course we're going to lose millions and millions of manufacturing jobs, which, as we pointed out in the beginning of this call, that whole situation is being papered over with basically welfare, food stamps, housing subsidies, income subsidies, medical subsidies. That's the only thing that's holding it together. So we've gutted the country, and now we've got a population of people that can't find work and are becoming progressively less and less employable, and we're papering it over with taxing the few people that still are working.
Yes, and while we're doing that, we're also taking away benefits. We're now attacking. I mean, like, part of this whole thing it was said back during the Reagan administration. It was said again during the Bush administration. It was said again during the second Bush-Obama administration that the incredible deficits that they ran made it inevitable that they were going to have to start attacking the entitlement programs and to start attacking those things that allowed those people to just barely get by. I mean, there are many elderly and poor that if that thing is cut, the amount of starvation in this country is just going to start to explode. And they have always been very much against those programs. And I certainly understand, some of the anger at those programs. They have not been handled well. There are many, many things that have been done wrong. It has gotten out of control. So, but instead of facing the problem and trying to deal with it while still keeping a floor within the United States, they're just looking to gut it indiscriminately.
Yep.
And it's dangerous. It's something that I know that you have brought up in some of your the videos on Real Econ TV and also Brass Check TV. The danger of violence in the future, because if you don't have that floor, people get very angry, and this is why there's been more protesting in other countries. This is one of the reasons, because they have reached that point.